Okay, now it's time for a question from the audience. Thank you so much for recording these in the Chani app and sending them to us. It helps me tremendously know how to explain things, where to go next, what to teach.
Hi, Chani. First, I just want to say I met you at Apocalyptic in Los Angeles, and you were so sweet and wonderful. And I just really appreciate everything you do. Okay, so my question is about the outer planets, our placements in things like Pluto. I'm fascinated with how that affects us generationally and our perspectives. For example, I know millennials have their Pluto placement in Scorpio, the sign of, rebirth, sacrifice for the purpose of rebirth, or boomers have theirs in Leo. And yeah, I just want to know how you perceive those and how they affect us all generationally and what that means for our future.
Okay, I love the examples that you gave because right now Pluto is in Aquarius. That's a fixed sign. It's about certainty and determination. And if you get locked in to something with a fixed sign, you're in it for the long haul, trust me. Now, boomers have Pluto in Leo. So they are having their Pluto opposition. That is the last intense Pluto to Pluto aspect that you can have. Because after that, you're no longer here, right? Like boomers are on their third act. It just is. And you're not going to live to see the next Pluto square Pluto. So the Pluto opposition is a hefty one. It happens in your 80s. Now, millennials have Pluto in Scorpio, and that is a square to Pluto in Aquarius. So millennials are having something called their Pluto square Pluto. Now, these are big, huge, astrological signatures that last a very long time. So it's not something that's going to impact you in the next couple of days. It's something that's going to impact you for years. And specifically when you get to the exact Pluto square Pluto for millennials, for people with Pluto in Scorpio, and for people that get to the exact Pluto opposition for people that are boomers that have their Pluto in Leo. But basically a Pluto placement is very generational, right? So it's like a lot of Gen Xers have their Pluto in Libra. I do. And so our whole thing was about the transformation of relationships. People with Pluto in Scorpio, it was like a lot about sex, and it was a lot about what was going to be torn down and what was decrepit. And because I'm just going to focus on millennials and boomers right now and this moment, because so many boomers, have made such an impact on the people that are now adults, like definitely Gen X, my parents are boomers, but also millennials. There's this like baked in tension in this moment because they are in the final stages of life and they had Pluto in Leo. So their whole thing was like the transformation of self and of identity. And they came along and changed everything. I know all the memes. I know the okay boomer sentiment. I know I have those parents too. And also we cannot, I think, underestimate what they did for culture. Like they were coming out of this really tightly confined, very controlled space, and they just blasted through it with identity. And they were like, this is going to be my thing. And it didn't, necessarily evolve into all the things that we needed it to evolve into. But that was then my generation and your generation's, baton to pick up or to be passed to. And so the boomers, led with a very strong will and identity that was like, my identity is going to transform the world. And it did and it didn't. Right? There's amazing things that I got from all the boomers I grew up with. They were excessively anti-war. It didn't stop any wars, but it's a very important sentiment to have brought in. And it is a movement that I am, a beneficiary of. And all of those like radical ways that they dissented from the persona that their parents gave them is something that I also benefit from. I don't feel the need to conform at all. And that's, got other things to do with other pieces astrologically. But I think the ways in which boomers were like, we are here to be in a kind of process of realization about what we can do with our selves and how we can creatively self-express, right? Like the creativity that happened in the 60s it is. And there's been other iterations and other creative movements that are glorious. And I don't think anybody can say that like the 60s and the 70s weren't just like this outpouring of creativity. And a lot of people stole things from there's a lot, we could go on and critique everything, but this is what it was. Like, Jimi Hendrix on stage is Jimi Hendrix on stage. Like nothing like that had happened before. And so that kind of like revolution or this feeling of massive change through art, through self-expression is very Pluto in Leo. And then you can look at every generation and every Pluto mark, but just knowing that Pluto's in Aquarius right now. Again, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, French, Haitian, American Revolution. It's a revolutionary spirit. So the babies that are being born now with Pluto and Aquarius are going to have that. They're going to bring that forth. And again, the millennials are in between, right? You're in your Pluto square Pluto moment, which is a very, very, very transformative moment of personal change and growth. And in some cases, it will just so happen to align with a Saturn opposition. And, there's all these things that happen at certain ages, astrologically speaking. We have a really good article on Chani.com. It's called The Astrology of Every Age. And it kind of goes through these major moments for you. But just know that each generation will change something given the quality, the nature, the style of the sign that they have their Pluto placement in. So again, millennials really change things in terms of gender and expression, in terms of sex, sexuality, in terms of our ability to understand our power, to use it, to wield it. And there's just this naturally born in friction between millennials and boomers because they both have Pluto in fixed signs. So it is just a natural, like, dig our heels in together. Who will win this? Who will be more stubborn in this situation? And also, of course, like the very real, like boomers, what did you give us? Or like we grew up without having the same opportunities as you. Don't lecture me. Like that kind of being locked in, the boomers being like, you don't have, you shouldn't buy $17 lattes. And millennials being like, we'll make them not $17. We needed some socialism along the way, but Reagan stole everything, didn't he? So kind of like that, It's kind of got that. So it's like how the generations relate to each other. You can look at through Pluto signs. And also the fact of the matter is that boomers and millennials are going through very important Pluto signatures. And so you'll notice things with your parents coming up and parents aging and you aging and like different timelines and responsibilities emerging through this shift within yourself and maybe within relationships to folks that have that other Pluto placement.